All right, we're back. Had a little issue there. My modem decided to do its annual reset slash update right in the middle of the day, so that was excellent. Thank you for anyone that stuck around. Dane, what have you been doing here in this last 5 to 10 minutes since I had some
I'm
internet
building a
issues?
few lineups. Building a few lineups. So
Okay, so you're
still
doing
got a
something.
few more to build. Yeah. So I took the time to get a couple of them done. But
Well, that's perfect. I'm just going to share the video again here because I'm not sure if it's the same link working for everyone. And of course, I can't do that. I was trying to share my screen as well, just to kind of show you a little bit with the sheet. But just in case that was the cause of the issue, I'm going to refrain from doing that, and we'll just talk about some things first of all. So what I kind of did, just because we've got no practice, we've got no qualifying for this race. Guys haven't even really been in cars since Phoenix after that, and that's when everything was kind of shut down. So I guess you really got to decide. Like we were talking about before I went offline here, you were talking about going off maybe some little bit of historical data, stuff like that. Some cars are going to be really fast off the truck, some aren't. I went over it, and the guy's name in my chat is Girth Brooks. Hilarious name, by the way. He's the one that shared that info with me that I will share in chat. He did share it again in Patreon. Very good data there as well. So kind of looking at who was fast off the truck. Even if you want to go look at 10-lap averages of maybe Phoenix first practice, Fontana first practice, that'll give you a sense of some fast cars that are off the truck as well. I'm going to see if maybe we can break it down into maybe the first 20 minutes, see if anyone's got information on that in the first 20 minutes of practice. But for the most part, myself, I'm going to be looking at track history at Darlington. Probably, I went the last 5 on the video below here, as you can see. That's kind of what I was concentrating on a little bit. But in terms of track history, looking at the last 2 years, looking at last year's probably going to have the most weight out of all Darlington track history for me, just because they had the 2019 rules package. And then the other thing that I'm really weighing in heavy outside of kind of qualifying position and place differential stuff is looking at the track type history. So on my sheet this week, what I was going to show you guys is you'll see beside the track history, kind of in the light green section, track history since the start of 2019. I wanted to compile all the races with the new rules package, the new downforce package that they introduced last year. So there is 13 races. There used to be 14, but Charlotte converted over into a roll for their second race. So we've got 13 races with the Vegas race earlier this year. And looking at that data specifically, there are 4 drivers who have multiple wins on this track type: Brad Keselowski, Joey Logano, Martin Truex Jr., and Denny Hamlin. They aren't necessarily been the most consistent on that track type, but they do have upside. They have shown a lot of upside. Each of them, 2 of them, sorry, Brad Keselowski and Joey Logano have 6 top 5s, and that's the most in the series. Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch each have 6 as well. But so Penske's been very fast on these tracks. It looks like Toyotas have been very fast on these tracks. Like I said, Kyle Busch has only got 1 win, but he's got 6 top 5s, 9 top 10s, and an average of 60.3 DK points. So are you looking heavily at either of those 2 things, or kind of how do you rank, I guess, the things that you're looking at and weighing in terms of like your model this week?
I think I'm maybe looking a little bit more at this year overall and who's had the most speed. Like I mentioned in the article, steep tracks, maybe back through last year with this package is probably what I'm weighing the most this week, with it being pretty green with no practice or anything. One thing I will say about that, to go back a little bit to the Dominator portion, I feel like we're going to see in the first half, say, of this race, we're going to see certain guys that are fast off the trailer and dominate, I guess you'd say, this race, or be up front. And then about halfway, once people are making adjustments, I feel like we could see a swap, and maybe some other guys that weren't so great early in the race become better as the day goes on. So that's where I'm getting to say maybe you could even go with 3 Dominators and GPPs, because it will be spread out a little more.
Yeah, I agree with you with the Dominator. I don't think we see one driver per se go out and lead, say, 150 laps or anything. I think it's going to
Yeah.
come in sections, like you said. We're going to have an early Dominator, and then they're going to make adjustments, and maybe we see a different fast car come out. So I personally think at the start of the race, just with Keselowski being on the front, I think he has the best chance to lead laps. He's going to get to pick his lane. On top of that, he's been very good here at Darlington as well. So just combining all those things, he's been good at the start of the season as well. So he just kind of hits on everything for me. So I think he's my favorite to lead early on in the race, and I think you feel the same way. I think we discussed this earlier because, I mean, you got Alex Bowman up there. I think he could be a sneaky Dominator up there as well, just because the Chevys have shown a ton of speed. But if I had to pick, let's say, rank my 4 Dominators, kind of in order of the way I think they'll kind of fall throughout the race possibly, would be Keselowski, Bowman, Harvick, I think, is going to get it together and lead laps. He always seems to be like really, really good here, and he really stood out to me in terms of just looking at like the track history. He's finished 4th, 4th, 9th, 2nd, 5th, 1st, and 5th in his last 7 races. So 9th or better in 7 straight with top 5s in 4 of those, including a win. So he's just been absolutely dominant here. So he would be my number 3 that I think. I don't think he probably gets up there and leads. He is starting 6th. It could come early. It could come. Are they having a competition caution? I kind of forget. I believe after 30 laps.
Yeah, 30 laps, yeah.
So I think after that first adjustment, I think you're going to see Keselowski probably lead those first 30 laps. Maybe Bowman gets ahead of him first, but I'm picking Keselowski and then Bowman, and then Harvick, I think, can maybe get up there as early as that competition caution. Probably into stage 2 is kind of where I'm looking at him. And I think he maybe be able to hold on to it and be the lead Dominator of the whole day. So in terms of order, it's Keselowski, Bowman, Harvick. I don't really even have a 4th, to be honest with you. Those are my 3 Dominators, and then I think Harvick leads the most laps out of those 3.
Yeah, I could see that. I'm going to throw 2 guys in there as well that could be potential Dominators later in the race. I feel like they're not going to be great early on, but after adjustments and everything, I feel like they're going to get a lot better, and that's Ryan Blaney. He's been great all year. Been really fast with the other 2 Penske cars as well. He's starting 7th, so he will have to lead or have some fastest laps to pay off that price. The other guy is Truex. He always, not just because I'm wearing the hat either. He's first of all, I mentioned in the article, he's starting 15th, so he has a little bit of place differential floor built in. But then just on top of that, they seem to get better as the race goes on, and he could potentially get up there in the top few and lead some laps too. So if he does that and finishes in the top 5, he should be able to pay off even at 1080.
Do you remember, I want to say 3 to 4 years ago, when it seemed like Harvick was like in nowhere near in any races, and then they called him a closer because he'd come like the final, I would say 40 laps, and then he just, boom, all of a sudden Harvick's there, Harvick's close to taking the lead, Harvick wins the race. Martin Truex Jr. feels like he's taken over that role from Harvick. There's races where Truex is nowhere to be found. You don't see him on the screen. They don't talk about him all day. They work on that car. Yeah. I think they are, now that Jimmy and Knaus are separated, those 2 are by far, Cole Pearn and Martin Truex Jr., the best 1-2 combo in the game. I think Harvick's right there as well with his crew chief, Kyle Busch even with his. But I put Truex and Pearn out front, so that really gives them a whole race. This competition caution only helps teams that have good communication like that. They're going to make the adjustments, and I think I agree, at least by stage 3, Truex is going to be in this race for sure. So 100% agree with you there. So,
it's been so long we've been off, you forgot Cole Pearn was gone from Truex.
Oh, jeez. My God.
2 months.
I can't even edit this. It's a live show. I can't even edit this. Sorry, Pernstar.
But no, still, I mean, James Small has been right there with them in all this. So, and they've shown to be doing that the same thing this year. So I don't think it's much of a change from Pearn to Small. So
yeah, for sure. And they showed it a little bit even earlier this year as well. So. I'm sad. I'm really sad the Canadian's gone, to be honest. I'll always associate Martin Truex Jr. with Cole Pearn. Maybe that's the 78. I'll just take
it feels like a type of guy that after he's off a few years, he's going to come back somewhere.
Yeah, after all this is
maybe
done.
not, but yeah.
That was definitely a shocker, him leaving. And I wish we could have had
Mm-hmm.
this whole thing. We wanted to have more shows. And, well, our last show, we kind of went over, the updates and how things were going. And I don't know if anyone watched. Probably not if you watched the first 2 minutes, because I forgot to record Dane's voice in our last video. We had an excellent conversation for 45 minutes, posted it on YouTube, and was later told that I can't hear Dane through the whole thing. So that was a waste of time. It was a great conversation, though. Like, we talked about some good stuff. But now that I can see that this live video is going to work, I mean, we're going to be doing this a lot more on Sundays, as well
Mm-hmm.
as more recorded shows with a lot of information on the screen, like I talked about before. So we talked about Dominators. Not seeing any questions coming in yet. A lot of that is my fault for my modem. I'm going to blame it on my modem. So we talked about Dominators. Now I want to talk about place differential. The qualifying was a little bit different this week, and for those of you that maybe haven't been paying attention to exactly how it's working out or how they decided that, the only qualifying we're going to see during this little stretch here is Charlotte. The Coca-Cola 600 is the only live qualifying that is going to be had. There's going to be no practice in any of these races, so you're not going to see any of that information on the sheet. So for this race alone, what they did to try and keep it in fairness to, because there's stage points and playoff implications, they took drivers 1 through 12 in owner points. Then they did a random draw. So Harvick was first because he's first in owner points, and he drew 6th. And then it went down the line and down the line. So the worst, that first group could start as 12th, and then they moved on to 12th to 24th, and then 25th and back or whatever. So that it was all a random draw this week. That gives, I don't want to say it gives us an edge because we've had 2 days to build on this. Everyone knows the qualifying order, but it does give us some place differential opportunities, because the first thing that stood out when they started doing this draw was you see drivers like Cole Custer starting 14th. You've got drivers, John Hunter Nemechek starting 34th. So you got 2 drivers that are fairly close in equipment. I mean, the 41's obviously a little bit better car, better team, but you've got 20 places of place differential because of that. Even like you see, I believe Joey Gase was one that started. Yeah, starting 32nd. Normally, Joey Gase is going to be starting at the back of the field, kind of like with BJ McLeod. Even Garrett Smithley starting 26th. Those are auto fades for me. It's the first thing I went through. Quinn Hoof, I know I said that name wrong, and I apologize to him. Starting 27th, that doesn't work for me. I went and X'd off those guys off my player pool right away. Who are some guys to you in terms of value, points per dollar value, that stand out in terms of where they're starting in the field this week?
First off, it's probably Kurt Busch. Even though I mentioned the article too, I don't really necessarily love the price at in the 8K range. If he was in the mid 7s though, he'd be or even upper 7s, he'd be massive chalk. Some other guys is Reddit, that range there from about 7,400 down to the mid 6Ks is a very nice range for us with Austin Dillon, Reddick, Buscher, Bell. I'm not so big on Austin Dillon. I think he's starting a little bit too far forward for me anyway. Maybe not in GPPs, but a guy that I have came around on a little bit in that range is Buscher. I didn't mention him in the article, but he is starting pretty far back there, 24th. Been pretty decent this year, and he's not a rookie. He does have some experience here, as opposed to Reddick and Bell, who have only been in the Xfinity series. So I will end up with probably about the same amount of Buscher as I have Reddick and Bell.
I like it. I was really high on Austin Dillon before we got the qualifying order. He was one I really wanted to watch. He's in that funny zone in terms of owner points where he was either going to start 13th or as far back as 24th. And I said, well, if he starts outside 20th, I'm very interested, because in his races here, he's finished no worse than 22nd in 6 career races here. And this is, like, I would say, the hardest track in NASCAR in terms of not taking out the road courses and stuff, but in terms of like your mile and a half, this is right up there, Atlanta, with the abrasive track, tire wear and stuff like that, and driver control. Austin Dillon, 10th, 16th, 4th, 12th, 22nd, and 11th in 6 career races on not the greatest equipment is very impressive. So I was very high on him, but then we've seen that he started 16th, and yeah, that's kind of right in that mid zone where I'll use him for GPP but I don't even have exposure yet in my first 20 lineups. I'm probably not going to until I get up to like 30 to 40. So I bet you overall I'm going to only have about 5-10% of him. I really like his brother. He would be my number one points per dollar play in terms. He's only 5,600, 5K on FanDuel. He is starting 33rd. That is awesome. He's got 3 career races here, 13th, 21st, and 20th. I would take a 25th place finish, a career worst for him at that price, and I think he's going to crush value. So he's going to be very high owned, possibly the highest owned on the slate, I think. But in cash games, I think he's a lock on both sides. I don't think you can get away from that. He's better than a 33rd place car, even though he's not as consistent. But again, he's been very good here. Seeing that he hasn't finished worse than 21st at this track is awesome. So those two for sure. You mentioned Buescher. He is 8th in my model right now. He has finished 12th, 13th, 17th, and 17th in 4 career races here. He's been awesome this year, to be honest with you, in terms of points per dollar fantasy-wise. He's got a 12.5 average finish over 4 races with a top 5 and a top 10 so far this year. And in terms of fantasy scoring, at least on FanDuel, where finish position is a little more important than place differential, he's averaging 56.6 FanDuel points per race. That is 3rd best, 4th best among all drivers. So that is very impressive for a 7,300 on FanDuel price tag. And then you look at his odds as well. I updated the odds on the sheet post-qualifying release. You look at Tyler Reddick and Austin Dillon, who are right above him in price. They're like 141, 111 to 1 odds, while Chris Buescher's 43 to 1 is what Vegas set that at. And that's betonline.ag, I believe, is where I pulled those from. So definitely there on him as well. You mentioned Kurt Busch, 100% there with you. Kurt Busch is good at this track. Chevys have been fast to start the year. He's unloaded off the truck fast so far this year, and then we've got him starting 22nd. I think he's a top 10 car today. So having him start 22nd here, he's going to be a lock for cash as well. Got a lot of exposure in GPP. I've kind of what I did in my 20 lineups. I want to go over just a little bit of strategy. I'll go over my 20 max strategy a little bit. So what I've done is I'll take a core of 4 drivers and just throwing this out there: Harvick, Kurt Busch, Ty Dillon I mentioned, and then say Chris Buescher. I'm going to take those 4 drivers. I'm going to run them 5 times with the other 2 drivers kind of swapping in 2 of my other guys for my core. And my core is about 10 to 12 drivers. After I built those 5, I'll go and I'll maybe change that core up. So I'll take out the 2 cheap guys, Buescher and Ty Dillon. I'll go, say, Bell and Suarez or something like that. I'll take that core 4 and build 5 more. And then because Harvick and who was my other guy, Kurt Busch, were my 2 core guys in those 10 lineups, I'll go switch those 2 up to, say, Logano and Elliott. And then I'll go back to my first 2, which were Buescher and Ty Dillon. I'll build 5. Then I'll take Buescher and Dillon out, and I will go put, like I had Suarez and Reddick. Then I'll go put those in and build. That's my 20 lineups. So if one of those drivers was to crash, or 2 of them, my lineups are dead. If my core 4 goes off, I'm looking really, really good. So that's kind of the way I'm approaching the 20 max today. How about yourself?
Yeah, similar things. One guy I wanted to get your thoughts on that I am using in 20 max is Suarez, and you kind of mentioned him there. Starting 37th, I wasn't very big on him coming into the year, obviously, with this new ride.
Yeah.
He does have an average finish in the mid-20s, I think.
He does.
This year.
Suarez, you're talking about Suarez.
So starting 37th. Yeah, starting 37th at 6,200. I'll mix and match him in there. No doubt. Let me see how much I ended up with.
He didn't make Daytona. He didn't qualify for Daytona. The other 3 races, right. 26.3 average finish. So even like a 30th place finish at his price, especially on FanDuel at 4,500, a 30th place finish, he's hitting value. Anything above a 30th at 4,500 on FanDuel, he's definitely hitting value. If he gets up in that 25th to 26th range where he's been finishing this season, I think that's excellent points per dollar value. I'm not going to have a lot. I like the other guys a little bit better. I don't like his ride in that 96, but starting 37th, I mean, there's only -3 if he crashes right away. And I think there's a lot of drivers, Yaley, Hauff, Gase, Smithley, McLeod, Balicki, Sorensen, Hill, Poole even, who I think are going to finish outside of him. I don't think they have as good a rides as Suarez. So I'm definitely on board with that.
Yeah. For the 20 max strategy, I'm similar to you. I'll focus in on a core and then kind of mix and match in certain points of the price ranges. And a big spot there was what I was mentioning earlier, that low 7K range. That's one of the ones I'm locking in a core and then mixing and matching a lot within that range. And then also down in the 6 and 5K range, I'm not going down much in the 5K range. The only guy I'm playing besides Dillon is Michael McDowell. And
Same.
John Hunter, I'm afraid he is going to get pretty popular too. Not nowhere near as like Dillon, but those are the three guys that I have in the 5K range. And I'm trying I'm not jamming two of those in and then going really high in the price ranges. I'm playing probably max one of those in every lineup, except just a couple odd ones. But you don't want two of those super cheap guys necessarily in every lineup you're making.
Nope.
Just so you can fit in two big names. So.
Yeah. One of the issues I have when multi-entering is I will mix and match all the top guys, but I tend to go overweight on a lot of my cheap value guys. So that's something I'm really trying to.
Same.
Because if that one value guy, I mean, the variance goes way up the farther you go down that salary list. So being overweight on guys with high variance maybe isn't the way to go. But so I've been really trying to, I guess you could say, instead of having two or three value guys that I'm going to use across all my lineups, I'm now trying to have two or three guys that I'm going to have maybe 40 to 50% exposure in the value range, and then another group of two or three drivers to kind of mix and match in there just in case one of those top three value guys goes out of the race. And then it really spreads out that risk and that variance, because normally your top guys are going to have, like I said, less variance. So that's the struggle that I've always had with multi-entry. But that's kind of how I've really combated it. And it's worked in other sports. I mean, a lot of the time, I talk about this a lot for me personally. I kind of cover like 7 to 9 sports now with all, like with League of Legends and all that combined in. So my time for multi-entering doesn't really work out. PGA and NASCAR is a lot easier because of the time. We've got 2 days to build lineups with both of those sports. Sometimes not as much with NASCAR, depending on when qualifying is, but going through this now, we're going to have 2 days. These draws, we're going to know qualifying on Friday, races on Sunday, or Wednesday's race, we're probably going to know qualifying by tomorrow. I think they're inverting the top 20. I'm not 100% on this, but I believe they'll take the top 20 finishers from today and they'll invert them. So whoever finishes 20th will start on the pole on Wednesday, and then all the way back to 20th, and then everyone outside of that will just line up 21st and back. I believe. Not 100%, but that's pretty cool if that happens. That's going to create some more place differential next week.
Right. Are there any guys, maybe not at the bottom of the price tiers, but maybe in that mid range that you're fading in, say, a 20 max build? Because there are some for me, and if what I do in a 20 max, or really any type build, is narrow in my player pool a lot. I think out of the 40 drivers, I've X'd 15 out that I'm not playing so far, and a lot of those came in the upper 7K range and low 8. So I'm out completely from Clint Boyer at 8,100. He could be fine. I don't see the upside for him. Even starting 13th, he's going to have to get top 5 and maybe even some fastest laps and things. Next, Matt Kenzel. I'm out on him completely, especially with no qualifying, no practice. I mean, he's not even been in the car
for 2 years or so.
Yeah, and he's definitely never been with this package. So
no.
I don't know. I don't see him having the upside starting 12th. Maybe if he was starting like 30th or something, I could play him. And then the two guys right below him, I X'd out too. Almirola, and it hurts me, but De Benedetto, I've X'd him out as well.
Yeah.
Starting way too far forward.
I do agree with you going through. That is huge too, is not just Xing out those bottom guys. But going into that mid-range and even into the upper, it's tough going into the top tier because any of them can win. We've seen that in NASCAR where it's really the opportunity to win has really been narrowed down to, 2 or 3 teams, it seems like every single race. So going and fading a few of these top guys seems very risky, but you almost have to do it because building 20 lineups with 25 drivers versus building 20 lineups with 15, you may, spreading it out like that, you're pretty much just hedging against yourself 20 times if you're using a giant player pool versus narrowing your player pool down. Like I said, if my 2 or 3 core guys goes out of the race early or, finishes outside the top 20, I'm dead. But if my core 4 or 5 guys goes off, I've now got 20 chances to take down the GPP. So in that mid-range, I agree with you. Jimmy is kind of on my X list right now. He's not in any of my lineups. I do have some Boyer. He's been very good this year, consistent, fairly good on this track. I paired him a little bit with Harvick, just going with kind of like the Ford stack. You don't really need to stack, but just I like teams that were fast earlier in the year, and that team, Penske, as well as the Chevys, were all kind of fast off the truck. So I'm kind of looking at that a little bit. But I agree with you on Kenseth. I don't want any piece of Kenseth starting 12th. If he was starting outside top 20, I'd probably consider it. 42, Chevys have been fast. 42 has been fast, but you've got new car, new crew chief, hasn't raced in like over a year, hasn't even been in a car because there's no practice, no qualifying, no time on the track. So I'm 100% with you there. Same with Boyer. I have a little bit of Almirola, like a very small percentage, just for GPP. I'm off on DeBenedetto as well. I talked about Ty Dillon. I'm going to have very small percentage GPP only for him. 0 Stenhouse for me starting 23rd. He's got a 16 average finish this year, but he's been very up and down here at this track, and I just can't have everyone. So I've decided to go with Buescher and Reddick right above him, and even Bell below him. So I've X'd him out. And then kind of in that top tier, as of right now, I have 0 Denny Hamlin, which feels really weird starting 10th. He's starting back almost the furthest of all the guys kind of in that top 12. Outside of Truex is starting 15th. So that's really good place differential there, but feels weird. I also have 0 Ryan Blaney at this time. You're kind of convincing me that he may be a late car. So I'm thinking about him as I get into another 20, 30 lineups, but that's kind of where I'm at in that mid. I got a question that just came in. We talked about this earlier. Andre is asking the top 2 Dominators for cash games. I had talked about my choices earlier. I think Brad Keselowski leads early. If he doesn't, I think Bowman leads early. One of those 2 is going to dominate the early part of the race, in my opinion. And then I think Harvick in the end leads the most laps, but probably not until late stage 1 into stage 2. How about yourself?
Yeah, I think Keselowski's got to be the cash game dominator over Alex Bowman, at least, as far as the front row guys.
Yeah.
And one of those 2 are for sure going to lead the first portion of this race. Second guy, my favorite would probably be Harvick, like you said. If you can fit him in there for cash games, he's going to be fine. He's going to be in that. I think he's going to run up front most of the day and probably take over the lead at some point. Only other guys I could think of for dominators in cash would definitely wouldn't make a 3 dominator cash lineup. I don't think I'll do 2 and do some more place differential plays. But maybe you could potentially play Logano or Chase in cash if you didn't go up to Harvick.
Yeah. It always seems with Logano, like he's very consistent. Always, maybe running up front, or he may fall back for a bit, but he's always up there. He doesn't seem like I'm just going to see if I have laps led on this season here. And look, Logano, okay, well, I'm wrong so far this year. He's 3rd in laps led. Keselowski is 4th, and they're right there, 118, 120. So there's been a lot of speed there. So in terms of laps led this season, we've got Chase Elliott at 186. We've got Joey Logano 120. We've got Brad Keselowski 118. Missed out on Kevin Harvick, who's 2nd at 159, and then Alex Bowman at 113. So those are the guys that have shown the most speed early in the year. And then really the only other guys that have been close have Denny Hamlin 79, Ryan Blaney 77. So Yeah, I think we're about on the same page with Keselowski early. If I only had to choose two, I would say Keselowski early and Harvick as my overall. I think him and Keselowski could be very close in laps led by the end of the day. I think Harvick's going to get the edge, and he's my pick to win today. And I believe, I don't know if you told the viewers yet who your pick to win is. I won't give it away. I'll let you reveal that.
Yeah, it's Chase Elliott. He's been great all year. He was in my skeleton in the Roto Pros in the Slack, and he's just been great all year. I think the Chevys are going to continue to be fast. They look to have turned the corner to start this year, all of them really. That entire team with Alex Bowman, Jimmy, and Chase. So Chase is my pick to win. Starting from 11th, I think he gets up there by the end, and he's been plagued by some unlucky events, I think, to start the year. So I think he's going to pick one up here pretty soon. Another guy you mentioned that you had X'd out Jimmy. I think he made it into 3 or 4 of my first 40. And the only reason for that is because of the Chevy speed. Being with that in the type of equipment he's in, I think he does have a chance to pay off, but he will have to have fastest laps at least or lead this race. With the fastest laps, what is your take on that as far as how spread out do you think they'll be? This is typically a place that the fastest lap portion of Dominator points are a little more spread out, I believe.
Yes.
Just due to the people maybe pitting early and having fresher tires, and they're obviously going to get the fastest laps at a track like this. And then also here, it's probably going to be varying strategies throughout the race. Today, especially with no practice, no anything. So I feel like it's going to be pretty spread out, not necessarily coming from who's leading or a certain person in the field. So that might lower some of the Dominator points that actually are available.
I agree with you, and that's a great point bringing that up. I do have some data here. I have last 10 races, and I actually put some detail in there. That is from Racing Reference. So looking at fast laps, let's go to last year. We'll sort by most. It was very spread out. You had Kurt Busch with 65, Kyle Busch with 43, Kyle Larson with 40, Chase Elliott with 24, and Martin Truex Jr. with 23. So we had 5 drivers with 20 or more fast laps and only 1 driver with more than 50. And then you go back to 2018 and we look at that. You had Kyle Larson with 75, so a little bit more in that race, but then it was spread out again. Alex Bowman with 40, Eric Jones with 40, Alex Bowman with 38, Boyer with 21, and Truex with 20. So again, we've got 5 drivers with 20 plus, and then just one more sample size here. It looks like exactly even more spread out on the final one. We've got 3 drivers with 40 plus, and then 2 more with 20. So each of the last 3 races, we've seen we've had 5 drivers with 20 or more, and only 1 in each of those races with 50 or more, and 75 was the most in there. So I agree that it's going to be spread out. Maybe I think it could possibly be more like 2018 where Kyle Larson had 75. I really think one team is going to figure it out. And, if Brad Keselowski's team, and they figure that out early, and he leads the whole first stage, I think he's going to see a lot of fast laps or, Harvick late or whatever. So I think one team's really going to figure it out and stand out like they have with 60, 70 fast laps. But I do think we're going to have 5 or 6 drivers with 20 plus just because of the circumstances of the week.
Mm-hmm. I think you're right on.
So another question, Eric Jones and Kurt Busch. We both love Kurt Busch. We talked about that. Probably one of the top points per dollar plays on the slate just with his price range, track history, and starting position. We did not talk about Eric Jones at all during this. I like him a lot, and I do have exposure to him. I'm just looking at his price here. He is 92. So he's got a lot of drivers around him that I think are going to take some ownership, like Alex Bowman, Kurt Busch, Chase Elliott, Joey Logano, Keselowski above him. So Eric Jones could come a little bit under-owned. And if he is, I love it. He's finished first. He won the race here last year, 8th the year before, and 5th in his rookie season. And that was in the 77 car, I believe, that 5th 3 years ago. So he's got excellent track history here. To start the season, the Toyotas have been a little bit slower. They have struggled. He's only got a 19.8 average finish, and he's starting 20th, so there is a little bit of risk there. I wouldn't use him for cash games, but for GPP, I want a piece for sure because I think he does have top 10 upside.
Yeah, I would say I'm probably a little underweight on him. I think in those first 40, I had like 20%, which could be what the field is, or just depends. Maybe he's closer to 30% on, but I am a little underweight on him just because of the price, really. I mean, I like the starting spot and all, but when you have to plug him in at 9,200, and he's not a dominator that you're counting, so 9,200 makes it tough to get two other ones in there.
Yeah. And then the last question here, get your thoughts on the 24 on Byron. We haven't talked about him either.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see. I like him a lot, and I'll be interested to see if he gets maybe an ownership increase because of all of this iRacing that he's won every single week. I don't really think so, but he potentially could just because he's been winning every single week.
Yeah, he comes in with some momentum, even though it is iRacing. I mean, that probably makes him feel a little bit better. I mean, that everyone got to come down to his level and play like his game, I guess you could say. So, and being able that he was able to go out there, he won 3 times, right? 3 of those 5 races.
I believe so.
Yeah, so
he should have won the first one, and he got wrecked. So
exactly. Yeah, he was taken out. So, I mean, I'm not looking at that per se as something I'm weighing. What I like here, kind of, where are we in price? I think he's going to be a little bit lower owned as well. Kind of like Jones there. There's a lot of guys around him I think are a little bit better. But starting 18th, he has struggled to start the year. He's only got 1 top 10 and a 21.8 average finish, only led 1 lap. He's near the bottom in terms of DK and FanDuel scoring, starting 18th. I think he's going to be low owned. I don't mind it at all for GPP because the Chevys have been fast. Even a 15th place finish, 12th to 15th place finish, I think is all right for him. If he's going to be 5% owned and say people are on Bowman or Kurt Busch crashes and you have Byron instead of Kurt Busch and the field's got Kurt Busch and you've got Byron, I don't think you need max stealing out of Byron. But you do need some extra circumstances to happen during the race for him to prove his points per dollar value is all. So I'll be a little bit underweight, but I'm definitely not fading him completely.
Yeah, so to answer that question in short, I really like him.
Awesome. I'm going to check a few more questions here. Yeah, so we got the feelings on the 24, Eric Jones or Kurt Busch. I think we've almost talked about everyone here. You talked about McDowell. He's definitely a guy I'm looking at kind of in that low range. I don't even mind him on. Actually, he's 4K on FanDuel. I'd probably ride with more like a Priest or Suarez, who I think has more upside, and you really need that finishing position on FanDuel versus just kind of scraping by and finishing where you start and kind of thing. I think you need that finishing position. I think those guys at the same price give a little bit more. But on DK at 5,400, if you just need that punt play and you've already overexposed yourself to, say, Ty Dillon, and this is the exact scenario that I ran into, was I had so much Ty Dillon when I was done my first 20, I had to go back and take Dillon out because I was at like 75% exposure to Ty Dillon. Like, whoa, I'm screwed if Ty Dillon's out. So I went back and then I just adjusted and put some Michael McDowell in, 2 or 3, just to get some Dillon exposure down. So that's kind of the way I looked at it. And I don't mind him starting 31st. I think he's got 20th to 25th place upside. So I'm definitely on him there as well. And like I said, I'm trying to go from 2 or 3 value plays to 5 or 6 and then have 2 or 3 of them that are going to be double exposure, but I'm going to have exposure to all of them just so that I'm not so concentrated on 2 or 3. All right.
Yeah, maybe the only other guy that we haven't touched on is Ryan Newman. First of all, it's just great to have him back after Daytona. But I would say that Newman starting 21st, I mean, I don't think he has a ton of upside, but I would probably sprinkle him if you have a lot of lineups. I don't think he's going to go out and finish in the top 5 or anything, but I don't think he's just going to ride around because he's just coming back from an injury. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, that one's tough. I mean, I don't mind the starting position at all for Newman, But I just don't feel like putting that risk out there. He just went through like a life-changing, dramatic accident. I believe he tested on Darlington just a few laps to kind of see to see if he can handle it or not. Obviously, had to be tested before he was cleared to race. So the fact that he passed, that's a good sign. But that isn't with 39 other cars on the track going 180 miles an hour in pressure situations. So starting 21st, I think he's got 15th place upside, but I think he's probably more on that 20 to 25th today. So I personally won't have any of him. I know I've had a few people ask, what about, I said I was fading Cole Custer. There was another driver I had on my list to ask you before my whole internet went down.
Maybe. I don't know.
Now it's gone. Bubba was another one that I'm fading. I hate him starting 17th. You mentioned John Hunter Nemechek starting 34th. I think he can punt there as well. That's kind of like a deep punt for GPP, maybe in 1 or 2 lineups out of 40 is kind of where I'm at there. Zero LaJoy starting 19th. He's another one of my exes. I didn't date him by any means. I just faded him.
We haven't talked about your man on the hat.
Oh, you know what? We have not. We have not at all. I was disappointed the way the season has started. In Phoenix, I was all for Kyle Busch. Picked him to win. He's dominated Phoenix, especially since they redid the track, moved the turns and stuff like that. He got a third. Where did he finish there? Geez, I can't go back now. But I forget where he finished. Logano won the race. Kyle didn't even lead a lap. It just seems very weird that he was consistently up front all day. Don't get me wrong. He was always in the top 10 the whole race. But just as he would creep up to that top 5, he'd fall off. And that's kind of the way Fontana went. That's kind of the way Vegas went for him. He's only got 14 laps led on the season. It's been very underwhelming. I think people are going to be heavy on Harvick. He's $300 cheaper. He's been better at this track. He's been better to start the season. I think Kyle's going to be lower owned, maybe outside top 5 in ownership. If that's the case, I'm going to be loading up a ton in my second 20 lineups here. My first 20 max, I've got, I believe, Harvick is around 60% and Kyle's around 30% right now. I think I'm going to flip that in my second 20 and go more Kyle and less Harvick for sure.
Yeah, I think in the 40 lineups I made for 20 max, I have 15%, so only like 6 or 7 lineups I think have him in it. But for the other lineups, I'll for sure be fitting him in because at any time he could go out and dominate the race. It wouldn't surprise anybody.
No, not at all. Even if he kind of sits in that, where's he starting here? Let's go back to that sheet, 4th.
Maybe you could do kind of a Toyota stack with them.
Him and Truex.
I wouldn't be if you could fit those two in and then drop down and maybe even add Bell in there as a Toyota stack that maybe they just are better off the trailer and better throughout the day. You just never know with this, but I would try to correlate maybe lineups like that. So.
That makes a lot of sense.
I know we did that a lot at Daytona, but I wouldn't go quite to that extreme. But I would take a select few lineups and maybe correlate them by teams or by manufacturer.
And that makes sense. Just like you said, that is an excellent point. We're not stacking because of the draft like we are for Daytona. We're stacking in this scenario because I believe you do too, if one team comes off the truck, if Harvick comes off the truck and he's fast today, I think Boyer, I think Almirola, Custer to some extent are going to have fast cars as well. Same with Toyota. Toyotas have struggled, so I think people are going to be a little less inclined to load up on them versus Penske and Stewart-Haas today. That's going to be lower ownership to begin with, and I think if Kyle's fast or Truex is fast or Hamlin's fast, I think all those Toyotas are going to be fast. They're going to kind of have the same adjustments. I think teams are going to have the same setup on almost all the cars to start of a team. So I do think looking at not just manufacturer, but especially on a team level, stacking 2 or 3 in hopes that one team comes out and is just way ahead of the others because of this certain situation. I'm not going to do this on a regular Darlington race, but the fact that we have no practice, no qualifying, no racing for 2 months straight, I think one team can come out and be quite a bit ahead of the others. So that's definitely a way to go about building your lineups today, is maybe trying to fit 2 or 3 from one team in your lineup just to get that correlation. Awesome point there.
I just made a Toyota stack as we speak.
Boom, done. That's a GPP winner. Kyle Busch, victory lane today. Well, I don't know. I don't see a timer here of how long we've gone on. Oh, right there. Round 2 of the video. We've gone about 45 minutes. I think we were like 15 in the other. So this was awesome. Got no more questions come in. I think we covered like almost every single driver in the field today. Talked about some strategies. If you guys have questions leading up to lock, we've still got 2 hours here while you're building lineups. You can hit me and Dane up in the RotoPros chat, in the Slack chat. We've got a free trial going on right now. So if you go over to rotopros.com, sign up, you're going to get access to our Slack for 3 days or 5 days, depending on the level of membership you sign up for or looking at. If you use promo code Chris, while you're signing up, you're going to get another 50% off once your free trial is out. And that's going to give you access to our, like I said, the Slack chats, first of all. That's our number one thing that we really push with RotoPros, because we're in there giving one-on-one coaching. We're talking to our customers. We've got more articles that come out. We post our plays in chat, our lineup skeletons, which are 3 or 4 drivers that we really love, and then the users go and they fill in the rest. Kind of gives you a look into what our core lineups are going to be for the day for cash and GPP. It gives us access to us too, and Kenny as well. Kenny, he's not doing any NASCAR content, but in terms of multi-entering, he is the GOAT and the guy that I turn to the most. It doesn't matter what sport. He picked up LOL and was crushing multi-entry 20-40 max. He was doing it with baseball. He was doing it. He's not allowed to play a bunch of sports because of New York, so definitely turn to him for some advice there as well. You can also reach me.
He has some great. He's got the strategy down for multi-entry, no doubt.
Definitely, and it doesn't matter what the drivers are, but he knows how to put his core together and turn it into 20 lineups to give him some very good, odds to win the GPP or get that takedown or very close. That's for sure. So then after RotoPros, you can reach out to me as well through dfsr.com. Or on Twitter at Jaeger_bombs9. What's your Twitter account, Dane?
It is at redstag007.
Awesome. And then the last place you can contact me is through my Patreon. You can do it through Patreon message. You can do it through my Slack that I have through Patreon. To hook up through my Patreon, just go to www.patreon.com/JaegerBombs. And you can get my sheets there as well if you're just looking for sheets. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. This is the first of many shows, the first of many races. Racing is back. Let's go make some lineups, get some green screens, and we'll chat in a couple days here as we've got another Cup race on Wednesday, like I said, and then we've got an Xfinity race on Tuesday. Awesome times. Good luck, everyone. Dane, thanks for joining me. It's been a blast now that we've got the internet working on my end. And let's go make some lineups. Have a good day, bud.
Yep.